Members of council, if I can please have you take your seats. This meeting is now resumed. Before the recess, council is debating the mayor's key item, Parks and Environment Committee item 19.4 on Transform TO. Before we return to that item, I would take the release of member holds. Councillor Carmichael Greb.
I don't have a release, but I have a petition. Can I submit that?
Uh-huh.
I have three separate but of the same petition of 145 signatures, 62 signatures, and 46 signatures, requesting the refusal of the official plan and zoning bylaws to permit a 24-story tower at 90 Eglinton Avenue West and 17 and 19 Henning Avenue, which we may be dealing with tonight.
Thank you. All in favor of receiving the petition? Carried. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. I have a couple. On page 20, CC 31.10, adjustments to the TPH 2017 operating budget to support supervised injection services. I can release that.
Okay, on page 20, CC 31.10?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Cressy is releasing. On favor? Carried.
Thank you, Speaker. The second, this is the combined item, which is on page 8, CC 21.16, review of current winter readiness. As well, it's the joined item is page 19, CC 31.2, the Ombudsman's inquiry report. I've spoken with Councillor Holliday, who had his questions answered, and I understand he's now comfortable for me to do it as a quick release.
Okay, just one sec. Let me just
Do you have it ready?
get to the page.
Councillor Pasternak has a technical amendment that he's ready with, if we want to do that quickly.
Okay, on which one? The CC 2116?
Yes.
Or the, okay.
He has it on page 8. The technical amendment, is on page 8, CD
Okay.
21.16.
All right, thank you. So let's go to Councillor Pasternak on page 8, CC 2116. You have an amendment?
Yes, Madam Speaker. This is a technical amendment drafted by staff. It expands the range period for coverage. We've just changed the months from the original motion.
Okay. On the amendment, all in favor? Carried. Item is amended, all in favor? Carried. Then we'll go to page 19, CC 31.2. Councillor Cressy is releasing. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Oh, you have more? Okay.
On page 18, TE 25.116, I have a motion which is to move the recommendations in the supplementary report, which is being circulated, if staff can put that up.
Okay, this is on
422 to 424 Wellington Street West zoning amendment application, request for direction report. It was circulated.
It's on page 18, T 25.116. It's here without a recommendation. Okay, so Councillor Cressy is moving the staff report. On favor, carried.
And then I have one more. This is on page 17, TE 25.55 Bathurst Key Neighborhood Plan. I'm prepared to release it. Councillor Crawford has two motions, which I believe are quick. It's to go through.
Councillor Crawford.
Motions, Councillor Cressy's fine with them. It just really talks about making sure the funding requirements are part of the 2018 budget process.
Do the staff have to copy that amendment?
I believe they do, yes.
Okay, this is on page 17, T 25.55. There is the amendment by Councillor Crawford. On favor, carried. And then there's the other amendment. On favor, carried. Item is amended. On favor, carried. Thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker, and good evening. I would like to release, I'm missing the page, LS 19.1. It's one of the deferred items, so I imagine it's page 3.
On page 3, the election signs?
Yes. I have two motions on that. Oh, okay, I'll continue to hold it then.
Okay. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Page 21, CC 31.24, relocation of concrete batching facility, I can release that.
On page 21, CC 31.24, Councillor Grimes, this relocation of a concrete batching facility. On favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Davis?
Page 18, TE 25.95, traffic control signals. I'd like to release it if Councillor Holliday just wants to vote in the negative. Oh, thank
Okay.
you.
Continue to hold it. Councillor Holliday?
Thank you, Speaker. The bottom of page 6, AU 9.10, supplementary report to the Auditor General's Phase 1 report. The city needs to ensure adequate detection and review of potentially excessive and unusual drug claims. Prepared to release that.
Okay, on page 6, the bottom of the page, AU 9.10, Councillor Holliday is releasing. On favor? Carried. Councillor Bailao?
Yes, at page 5, EX 2617, providing new affordable housing opportunities at 1315, 1719 Winchester Street. I have a motion.
Okay.
Here.
There it is on the screen. So this is on page 5, EX 26.17. Councillor Bailao has an amendment. It's on the screen. On favor? Carried. Item is amended. On favor? Carried. All right. So we'll go back to the item. Councillor Thompson to speak.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I rise in support of the report. I rise to thank the staff for an excellent report. I'm very happy that we're actually not denying global warming and that denying that there are problems with the environment and GHG. In fact, I was at the break, Speaker. I had a chance to watch the TV. There was a news piece on an area in China where a man was saved by a group in the village from an amazing flood that had taken place. And I was just thinking that that could be in any of our respective wards where through environmental concerns and the issue of how we protect ourselves and what are the overall impacts and challenges that we face as a city and globally. And so I know that we're not denying the truth of global warming and the issue around emissions and climate change and so on. I'm happy for that. What it seems to me that we're talking about is the issue around funding and whether or not we can afford to do what the report requires us to do. But I think the opportunity cost of us actually not doing it will be far greater than the amount of monies that we are required to pay. It seems to me if we don't actually want to do it for ourselves, that's okay. But we actually have to do it for our children. We have to do it for their future. And so I think that we are tasked with the responsibility of protecting their interests. This is what we do for them today. And I think that it's really important for us to do the right thing. There are many accords and many agreements that have been signed globally and so on, and there are always, it appears that there is some excuse as to why we can't act, why we can't make decisions in order to save and protect the environment. We've heard from Councillor Perks and many others, and I've been listening to Councillor Perks now for a number of years about how serious he is about the environment. And thank you, because you have helped to educate me personally on the need for us to take action. So I thank you, and many other members of Council as well. This is a very serious issue. This is an issue that has great ramification about global warming and the overall effect and even just the quality of the air that we breathe in on a daily basis and the opportunity it is to ensure that the more we do to protect as stewards of the environment, the better the opportunity is for us to save the generations that are going to come. Let me then also turn to the notion and the idea that Because we invest in the environment, it's going to have an adverse impact, negative impact on economic viability and economic opportunities. At one point, that was the conventional thought. I think that that has been dispelled greatly by many, and I think that this particular opportunity in terms of this report to help us to advance the reduction in GHGs is extremely important for us to heed the information that, as well as the warning that comes, because we have gone through the ice storms. We have had in August of 2005, in my own ward, many of my neighbors had lost their backyard because the creeks and the flooding that took place there within the context of my own community, not in China, not in some distant land, quite frankly, local. It's really important in terms of what we do. So I'm going to support this, and I'm going to support Councillor Layton's motion, because I think if we are serious about the environment, if we're serious about wanting to ensure that we, who are the steward of this city's environmental interests because of our elected position, we too must put forward the resources that are needed to invest in protecting our environment. If there are monetary resources, we need to step up and find it to put it in place. There are human resources that are required. We need to actually implement and put that in place. Because if we don't protect the environment, then of course our lives and our interests are in peril and in fact is at stake. So I don't think that we ought to be I guess pound wise and penny foolish. I think that's the saying goes. So we need to invest in our own interests, Speaker. So for those reasons, I'm going to support the report that's in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I recognize that this is a priority for Council. It's a priority for all of us. It's also the Transform TO recommendations are a priority for me. I did support them at Executive. I will support them here, and I'll continue to support them through the budget process. But again, my remarks focus more around process and the importance of process through the budget process. So when I look at, I'll be supporting Councillor McMahon's motion as opposed to Councillor Layton's. And the two critical components of the differences between the two with Councillor McMahon is submit through the 2018 budget process. Councillor Layton include in the 2018 operating capital budget process. I think it's incredibly important that, well, first of all, we have many priorities across the city. I recognize that this is an incredibly important process. Don't get me wrong at that. But there are many other priorities we have in Council and across the city. Not all of them are going to be coming to this floor for a debate. And we have to recognize that they have just as much importance. Again, not recognizing that this is also important. But it has to go through the budget process. Really what this is, and if we support Councillor Layton's motion, it takes away from the integrity of the budget process. We have a process as complicated and challenging and difficult as it is a process we have to follow. We can't make individual decisions on this floor, and we do that on occasion. We shouldn't be doing that. There are a couple of motions here in front of us tonight that I'll be putting off to the budget process, and I've done this. It seems to be every July these kind of motions come up where we want to make a decision right now because it's an important decision, but we're overlooking one of the most important processes that this city has, which is the budget process. So it needs to go through the budget process. We need to look at its entirety with all of the other priorities, and we need to look at it in the context of our complete financial picture. So I know this is going to continue to be an incredibly important item as it moves through the process, but it does have to move through the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DiCiano?
I think it's Councillor DiGiorgio first.
I apologize. Councillor DiGiorgio.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and Councillor Perks, you won't want to hear what I want to say. First of all, I echo the comments of the budget chief in that, and I support Councillor McMahon's motions. To not support her motions and effectively prejudices the budgeting process and really makes us wonder why we have a budgeting process. So I firmly believe, and I don't think supporting her motions necessarily creates a poison pill for Councillor Layton's motion. It just basically says we have to approach this problem, as we do all other problems where there are growing demands on us and financial challenges, and we're forced to make some tough decisions. And the tough decisions will be, and Councillor Matlow, I invite you to make those tough decisions when it comes through the budgeting process, and take a look at a city building initiative like more affordable housing, and then look at what's happening in your ward that you might want to defer or delay, or say, you know what, that's not quite as important, so let's not spend money on local projects, but rather focus on city building projects. On a personal note, I can tell you that what has been in the works in my area to eliminate emissions from a horrible use that is actually quite right across the street from my constituency office, and probably will help meet up to 10% of the goals of what's being proposed in the initiative being put forward in this report. My fear, of course, is that in the budgeting process, whatever monies have been allocated, and I say something about 8.5 million have been allocated in my area to deal with a problem that's been a long-standing problem, that 8.5 million might be shunted aside again and delayed even further and pushed further down the line. And in return, we end up funding something that is in the neighborhood of 6.7 million. So those are issues that need to be dealt with through the budgeting process. We need to make our arguments through the budgeting process to arrive at what is the most appropriate way of dealing with this global warming problem. And there are many options available to us. We just have to say to ourselves, we can't kickstart all of those options and fund all of those options and still think that we're being honest, not only with ourselves, but with the electorate. And next year in particular, some of you might want to make those tough decisions and go out to the electorate with your platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to be supporting, obviously, the Transform TO initiative, and I'll also be supporting Councillor McMahon's motion. You know, I find it incredible that the same, I don't know, games, if you want to call it, are played over and over in this chamber, and somehow an initiative as good as Transform TO has to be divided. We can't come together because a simple motion that's going to strengthen the business case gets turned into whether you're a climate change supporter or you're a climate change denier, right? The minute something comes up that says, we should look at how we spend every dollar in this city, right? Let's go to the budget process with everything we do. No, here the pictures come out of the floods and the trees and all this kind of stuff, and then it's pitting one side against the other. Everybody in here cares about their children's future. It's not just those that are saying we shouldn't be creating a better business case. I just find that it's very, very unfortunate how the same games are played where there's this narrative and this skepticism that has to be built up from one side of this chamber so that the media has something to print the next morning when everybody here is on the same page. We need to start spending smartly in this city. Imagine a business case that comes to us and says, you know what, maybe there's going to be, when we ask for this information, more information that comes forward that, I don't know, maybe the private sector somehow is going to save us $100,000 by bringing an initiative forward. How much is that $100,000 going to do for us if we want student nutrition programs next year and whatnot? The reason why we can't get anything built or done in this city is because we don't prioritize anything. We don't look at anything from an economic lens. Everything by default should be looked, no matter how important, should be looked at through the budget lens. And it's no wonder that we can't get anything built around here. You still got councillors looking up the definition of prioritizing. That's the problem around here. Okay? Everybody's perfectly on side with Transform TO. All people in here want is more information to make the case. That's all we want. And if more information is such a bad thing, don't come to the Budget Committee and debate. Let us do our thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I've been mussing around on this, deciding whether or not to contribute to this, and most of the day I've been thinking to myself, what do you contribute to something that's been talked about now for a long time, and as you look around, very little happens or very little changes, and to try to make a contribution to that is a real tough one. I often talk to people, and people say to me, Anthony, you know what? There's not a whole heck of a lot that you can do here locally, right? Most of our air and water quality and all those other things are determined more in New York and Michigan and Ohio than they ever would be here in Toronto or in the greater Toronto area. And I've had that conversation a lot with people, and I sat here, sort of those conversations have been playing out over and over again in my head, and I was trying to find a quote earlier on, and a real interesting quote, I might add, from a movie you might all recognize, Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart, at one of the last scenes, I believe, in the movie, looks down at Elsa and he says to Elsa, I'm no good at being noble, but it doesn't take much to see that the problems of three little people don't amount to a whole hill of beans in this crazy world. And I couldn't help but be reminded of that as I think about the comments that have been communicated to me over the years on this in this one subject. But I disagree with that statement. And I disagree with those people because it's not about three crazy cities. It's about each and every city on the planet. Each and every one of us, we're all faced with the same issues, with the same problems. Now, we can sit here and dilly-dally and just continue to talk, and that's fine. And then maybe Stephen Hawking can have his predictions come to fruition, while his predictions might be a little more complicated and a little more comprehensive than just about climate change and overpopulation and all those other things he talks about. Or we can actually do something. So we can get hung up on words like prioritize. Let's figure out how to sit down, talk about it one more time. Or we can do something. Well, here's one thing I'm very hopeful about. This particular report went from nowhere in the last council meeting to being footballed over to this meeting because it wasn't a priority. All of a sudden it became the mayor's key item. That's hopeful. Because now it becomes the mayor's key item and we get to actually discuss it and get to decide whether or not we're just going to talk some more, figure out what's the priority, figure out which is the best thing for us to do, or actually to move on and do something. Now, is spending $6 million or $7 million and then another $6 or $7 million, is that going to transform Toronto? I think we'd all be pretty naive to look around and say, yeah, that's going to do it. That's going to make the difference. That's going to make the Hawking prediction go from 100 years to 1,000 years all over again. We'd all be silly to think or say or do that. But we need to do something. Because every time you do something, it changes someone's habits. Does that mean that everybody's going to stop drinking bottled water tomorrow? Am I going to stop drinking bottled water tomorrow? Probably not. Am I all of a sudden going to be the one that's going to sort of get his garbage all together in the right spot and everything and produce less and less and less? I don't know. But when you go off and you do something, it reaches out to someone somewhere each and every time. And it's important for us to do that and to continually repeat it so that tomorrow I give up my bottled water, so that I become better at streaming my garbage, so that I lower my footprint. I'm out on my bike more and leave my car home more and more. That's what it's about. It's the little things. Is that going to change the predictions? I don't know, but it's going to help.
Thank you. Your time is up. Councillor Campbell, you took your name off? Okay. So the last speaker, Mayor Tory.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I would like to say that I made this a key item for a reason. And one of my key items, I can pick anything I want. It's one of the few things you get to do. And it's because my commitment is genuine. And I think the debate got a little bit polarized this afternoon. I think, frankly, if it had been in a partisan legislature, the same thing might have happened, because that's the nature of what often happens, and somebody was commenting on that a couple of minutes ago. But I think that we've had a debate on this, and one thing that's interesting is that even those who've got up and made suggestions, some of which I'm going to support, about analyzing some of the things that are proposed to be done in this report, which we're going to approve and which I'm going to vote for with enthusiasm, it led to that kind of debate. And the only part that I regret is some totally lacking in subtlety name-calling that was engaged in here, largely at my expense, which I think is completely unnecessary. And I want to acknowledge the work done by people. I want to acknowledge the work done by Councillor McMahon as the chair of the committee, but other people who are in this chamber who have spent a good part of their lives, beyond even their service on council, dedicated to some of these issues. I think of Deputy Mayor de Bearmaker, I think of Councillor Perks and others, and I respect that. It's something that I didn't have as much interest in 10, 15 years ago as I might, but I have the interest now. Why? Because there is absolutely no question but that the people of Toronto want us to clean up our act and clean up our city in whatever way we possibly can. And I think it's also something that is going to pay many different dividends, both environmental and financial and economic over time for the City of Toronto. It's just the right thing to do, to move ahead and clean up our own city. And I did, and I thank Councillor Layton for his comments, because I did, without any sense of anything other than very genuine commitment, stand in Toronto and in Chicago and in Montreal and in Paris and said that Toronto would resume its position of leadership on this. And I would want to be the person who leads the city to do just that, starting with this plan and moving forward to actually see it implemented, because I think it is an important thing for us to do, and I think the people want us to do it by and large. But are there questions that arise out of this report? Lots. I mean, the notion that people would come in this room and kind of suggest anybody and say, well, this report is absolutely the be-all and end-all, every question is answered, not a jot or tittle or a comma or an exclamation mark can be moved, I think is if I came in here and proposed that, you'd say I was trying to run some sort of dictatorship, that it goes against the spirit of what goes on in this room, it goes against the spirit of how we operate here. And so I think there are questions. I'll name two that have come out with respect to even the questioning I've done since I first read the final draft of the report. One is, I heard Councillor Perks earlier on, Madam Speaker, say that he said, we tailored this thing to make sure it fit the government programs. Well, I'm sure that was the effort that was made, but when I asked senior officials of our own government after I read the report, is this tailored so that we can maximize the amount of money we get from federal provincial programs, the answer that I got was, number one, that people weren't entirely sure, and the main reason they said for that, which I believe to be true, is the reason they don't know is those government programs in many cases haven't even yet been set up. And so one of the things that one of Councillor McMahon's motions seeks to do is to kind of seek greater clarification on that, because obviously we would like to maximize the impact that our efforts have based on our ability to attract this money. The second thing relates to and we've got all bogged down in the use of the word prioritize. I mean, frankly, I could have used 10 other words there, but I just believe that so strongly about everything you do around here is you do the right thing, and you do the right thing in the right way. And that I think the information that's being requested here, and I acknowledge, I've read the business cases there, I've got them right here, courtesy of Councillor Layton, but there's lots of information that is not in those business cases, and I think there's information that we can gain in terms of helping us. I've said today to a number who I've spoken to, It may be the case that I want to say, let's even spend more on energy retrofitting of buildings because we can get on with reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we can get on with saving the money on our energy bill, and that's going to be something that we should do just because it makes sense to do that. And that analysis is not here, with respect, in the business cases. It's not here. And so I think our job is to analyze and to look at the quality and the return and the timing of investments and to deal with that. And when Councillor Carroll said earlier on the $6 billion may well be the city's amount invested over 30 years, let's say that's the right number. I think that could turn out to be the best investment we've ever made in terms of both helping to fix the environment and doing our share in our own city and at the same time leading to savings for us. If I can just take that extra minute you sometimes will grant me, Madam Speaker, I will if I can. And by the way, other mayors said the same thing in light of Mr. Trump's declaration that we as mayors collectively, and that's why I went to some of these meetings so I could affirm Toronto's position that it was going to move forward regardless of what Mr. Trump said because it was the right thing to do. But I don't take away from the fact that you do the right thing the right way. And I'll finish my last comment to be on the budget process. I am going to support Councillor McMahon's motions. I am not going to support Deputy Mayor Min Wong's motions, and I'm not going to support Councillor Layton's motion. Why? Not because he moved it, not because of anything to do with what amount will ultimately be approved for this, but because it is the wrong way, as Councillor DiCiano said, to do budgeting. And if you check the record, I've been criticized for the fact that random motions brought forward like that, committing budgetary monies on a one-off basis, I vote against all of them because you have a budget process in which you do this, and that's where you look at everything and make decisions about this kind of thing. And the notion we're going to go piecemeal through the budget and have every week a new motion, I think is the wrong way to do business. That is not doing the right thing the right way. That is doing the right thing the wrong way. So I will support this with enthusiasm, this plan. I hope all members of this council do. I would hope we could have a unanimous vote in favor of this plan because it's the right thing to do, but let's do it the right way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Numeric order? Motions will be in numeric order. Oh, sorry. Motion 3 comes first by the Deputy Mayor.
Vision for why my motion is being or could be deemed redundant if Councillor McMahon's motion passes.
Well, Councillor McMahon's motion refers to the budget process. So we support her motion. Yours is redundant.
I'm sorry, I don't believe the motion refers it to the budget process. I can't find it in front of me, but I believe it asks for something within the budget process, not in fact, it directs staff to report back as part of the budget process, but nothing with respect to the funding of it. So I'm just curious as to the rationale, partly because I took great care in working with the Chief Financial Officer to ensure that this motion would in fact give very specific direction to staff for inclusion. So I need more than it refers it to the budget process because it doesn't.
Well, your motion is to include the 2018 operating capital budget to implement the recommendations. Councillor McMahon, which is
asking for more information.
Yes.
So I'm just not clear that why we can't have both information.
More information.
Why can't we both have information? Our budget is full of recommendations and information, both information and the direction. I'm not clear on that. I don't know if I'm the only one.
Well, it is redundant, Councillor Layton.
So could I just ask a question? If you'd like to support the full implementation, you would vote against Councillor McMahon's motion. Is that correct?
Well, that's what I think members of council have their
Thank you. I
own
believe they do now.
interpretation. There were questions asked over and over again by Councillor McMahon, and she answered the questions. Our first motion is motion number 3 by Deputy Mayor Min Wong. Recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Carmichael Greb.
one not to vote for, I don't think anyone's going to listen to me.
This one?
Councillor Crisanti, please. Councillor Crisanti, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 10 to 33.
Motion 1A by Councillor McMahon. Recorded vote.
Councillor Filion and Councillor Crisanti, please.
The motion carries 27 to 16.
Motion 1B by Councillor McMahon, recorded vote.
Councillor Pasternak, please, and thank you.
The motion carries 42 to 1.
Motion 1C by Councillor McMahon.
Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Cole, please.
Councillor Davis, please.
The motion carries 41 to 2.
Motion 4A by Councillor De Bearmaker. Recorded vote.
Councillor Carroll, please. Councillor Doucette. Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Wong Tam, please.
The motion carries 36 to 7.
Motion 4B by Councillor De Bearmaker. Recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Bailao. Councillor
Okay,
Pasternak.
Councillor, stop.
Councillor
We're in the
Wong
middle of
Tam,
vote.
please.
Councillor Filion, please.
The motion carries 35 to 8.
Item as amended, recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Lee. Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Wong Tam. Councillor McMahon, please.
The item as amended carries unanimously, 43 in favor.
Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you, and thank you for everyone that's here. So now that we have 43 members, or 44 members in the council chambers, we have a number of members' motions that need to be introduced, so if we can do that now before we continue to our next item. Okay, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong.
Really? Yes.
Yes, what?
I'd like to introduce that.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Councillor Crawford.
Thank
You're
you, Madam
next.
Speaker, I think this is a motion for Section 37 money. Yes, it is.
Carried.
On favor? Carried.
How?
Councillor Wong Tam?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you want to go to that?
I figure somebody downtown should be on that bill. Oh, yes.
Okay, Councillor Wong Tam, you have the motion?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The motion is before you on the screen, and it is rather urgent simply because there's an RFP that's going to be issued by Infrastructure Ontario, and this council will not be meeting again until October.
On favor? Carried. Councillor Mihevik, you're up.
Yes, this is to introduce a motion on support for the provincial government bill 148, consistent with our poverty reduction strategy, and the hearings will conclude by the time of our next council meeting.
On favor? Recorded vote? This is just to introduce it.
It's just to
Okay, recorded vote.
the $15 minimum wage.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Bailao, please. Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Robinson, Councillor Holland, Councillor Palacio, please.
Councillor Matlow, please.
The motion to introduce carries 33 to 7.
Okay. Councillor Pasternak?
Yes, it is both an honor and a pleasure to move the motion. We want to make sure we don't go the summer without a Toronto youth equity advocate, a vital position for the city.
On favor? Carried. Councillor Carmichael Greb?
Sorry, I was caught off guard.
I don't know which one it is. This is an urgent motion for OMB.
On favor? Carried. Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much. This one is urgent because it's going to the Toronto local appeal body before we come back to council.
On favor? Carried. You have another one, Councillor Doucette.
I do. And the second one's even more urgent because we have to have this done by 4:30 tomorrow if we're going to be appealing.
On favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Councillor Cressy, you have 4.
Thank you, Speaker. The first one can be put on the screen. This one is urgent as the hearing will be taking place before we return.
On favor? Carried.
the next one. This one is urgent because the AGCO hearing will take place before the next council meeting.
On favor? Carried.
This is urgent because a settlement has been reached, and it will be introduced with a report tomorrow.
On favor? Carried.
No, there's a second part, and this is the second part to the same settlement. The previous one was the heritage component. This is the rezoning settlement. Again, the report will be circulated.
On favor? Carried.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay. So now we'll go to our next item, which is on page 3, LS 19.1, the election signs. Councillor Perks, you held the item down, but I know you were trying to release it. Do we have any questions?
Speaker, if I may, just on
Councillor Perks?
I believe if Councillor Palacio is ready, he and I can release it with just a couple of motions and no debate.
I think somebody else said to hold it.
It was Councillor de Bearmaker who was doing that on behalf of Councillor Palacio.
Oh, okay.
So I have two motions and Councillor Palacio has one. We've worked together. If we can just do them, we can do it without
Okay,
questions
do you
and debate.
want to present?
Sure,
yours
yeah.
first? Okay, Councillor Perks?
So I had two motions. The first is simply...
Okay, hold on. Councillor Fletcher, yes?
No?
Oh, we're on it. We're on the item, yeah. Okay, Councillor Perks, sorry.
Okay, well, I'll just speak then.
And move your motion. You have the motion?
Yeah, I've got two motions. The first is that we receive the supplementary report for information, which is what the supplementary report recommended. So that's just doing something that the staff have asked us to do. The second is asking that City Council direct the City Solicitor, the City Clerk, and the Executive Director, Municipal Licensing and Standards to report to the October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2017 meeting of City Council on any additional enforcement as part of the forthcoming report on third-party election advertising. I'll just take a minute to explain that. You'll recall when this item first came to our attention, we were told there are new rules that the province is considering that will allow a third party to register and to fundraise and put up signs. And the signs might say, picking something out of the air, fund the climate plan. Or they might say, don't vote for Councillor Perks. They can say whatever. I know which one I would prefer that you all funded in the event that that happened. There you go. And a number of us raised concerns that this would allow dark money to come into our election process. In the report that we have in front of us, staff tell us that we don't yet have the full regulatory package from the province so that we can understand how that's going to work, and that they intend to report in October on what's happening with that regulatory package from the province. What this motion that I'm proposing does is say, okay, tell us how all those rules change, but also tell us if there are all these other people putting up signs, what is the enforcement cost to the City of Toronto and the necessary enforcement resource going to be, so that we don't have, you and I operating or other candidates operating with one set of rules around where the signs go and an enforcement regime, and then these third-party people putting up signs without any accountability and without any resources to manage to make sure those signs aren't going up in illegal locations. That's all it's intended to achieve. I developed it in consultation with city staff, both from licensing and standards, the clerks, and the city solicitor's departments. So with that, I hope you'll support those two motions.
Thank you.
And support the motions from Councillor Palacio and then the amended report.
Thank you. Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item was before the last City Council, and I asked, as Chair of the Committee, I asked for a deferral because there were some concerns at that point from a number of members of Council, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Perks, Councillor Fletcher, and so on. So there were a few concerns. And on that, I believe that city staff, they have done a phenomenal amount of work in terms of addressing those concerns, and I want to thank city staff from municipal licensing as well as from legal for addressing those concerns. So the motion that is before you is a very lengthy one that's going to take me 5 minutes to read. But in essence, what it does is addresses those concerns. As Councillor Perks also indicated, those are some of the concerns that were raised at the municipal licensing standards and are part of this big motion. So I hope that members of council will support what's before you. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further speakers? Okay, so if we can put the motions on the screen, a vote. So this is on page 3, LS 19.1. So 1A by Councillor Perks. On favor? Carried. One B by Councillor Perks. On favor? Carried. Okay, next is Councillor Palacios. On favor? Carried. And so, how about, who moved receipt of the confidential report? That's already done, okay. Item is amended, recorded vote.
Thank you, Caesar, for all your work on that.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DiGiorgio. Councillor Wong Tam.
Councillor DiCiano, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Robinson, please. Councillor Fillion. Councillor Cole, please.
Councillor McMahon, please.
The item is amended, carries unanimously, 42 in favor.
Okay. Our next item is on page 3, NY 22.4, which is the official plan and zoning amendment for 90 Eglinton Avenue West, 17 and 19 Henning Avenue. Councillor Greb, you held the item down. Do you have questions to staff?
No, I do not.
Do we have any questions to staff? Okay, Councillor Greb, you held the item down to speak.
Yes, I have a motion
Okay.
that City Council delete the North York Community Council recommendations and adopt instead the following recommendation. City Council refuse the application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaws for 90 Eglinton Avenue West and 17 and 19 Henning Avenue for the following reasons. Proposal represents an over-intensification of the site and any other valid planning reasons. This development has been going on since before I was elected. It has some great stuff in the report, $1 million for Section 37, extra parkland, tenants of Eglinton Connects, but it's a 24-story building at the end of a residential street. Residents have been up in arms since the application was put in, and I have been supporting residents with their fight to allow this, which is outside of the Young Eglinton Growth Center. So I am moving refusal on this because it just will not work in this location.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow to speak.
Madam Speaker, I have a motion, and you can put the motion as written on the screen. I know this is being redrafted simply just to reflect the fact that Councillor Carmichael Greb is moving refusal. The rest of it will apply. What I'm requesting in the motion is important, and I hope that all of you pay attention because this could affect your community too. That amend the official plan and zoning bylaws for 90 Eglinton West and 19 and 1719 Henning Avenue, and council request applicant to provide full office replacement and to address related overall built form considerations under the intent of the Eglinton Connects bylaw as approved by City Council at its meeting held August 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th of 2014. So the official lands strategy bylaw, that's OP 231, passed by Council in 2013, mandates 100% office replacement. Yes, that is being contested by many in the development industry, but it's Council's position. And not only is it Council's position, but the city has spent years of staff resources fighting to defend and protect that position. In fact, there have been countless refusal reports by staff when this has been challenged. Again, yes, contested by developers, but it's Council's position that we expect full office replacement. And in fact, there have been countless letters sent to the board as well, stating that. Eglinton Connects, with respect to this area, doesn't allow further than mid-rise. And this would not adhere to the intent of Eglinton Connects, which was approved by Council as well. So in other words, if we support staff's recommendations, with all due respect, and I know that staff are often in a position where they have to kind of find that place that they believe may win at the board, may not win at the board, what is possible, etc. I respect that, I acknowledge that, it happens often. But if we as council go in that direction, rather than what my motion asks us to do, we will then undermine our own policy. We will undermine our own interests. And what will happen in your wards along with mine is that over and over again, developers' lawyers will use this as a precedent and say, well, they're not serious. They're not serious. That councillor's not serious. That city staff aren't serious. The city's not serious about office replacement. They're going to be, picking and choosing when they want to have 50%, maybe 20%, maybe 70%. They're going to be picking and choosing. Now, should we have a conversation in the future about when it's possible to have a reasonable conversation about flexibility with respect to should it be 100% or not? Maybe that conversation should happen. I acknowledge that. But we don't live in a world that we have the luxury to undermine our own policy now, because the precedent will be used against us over and over and over and over again. Now, you may wonder, why am I addressing this directly? So, for two reasons. One is, my ward is directly across the street from Councillor Carmichael Grebs. So this directly, locally, will impact the future of Eglinton and any other Eglinton councillor, frankly, and others who represent avenues in the city with respect to office replacement. This will change the character of Eglinton Avenue West for the future. We're right at the beginning of the redevelopment of Eglinton because of the new crosstown. This will set where we're going to go. Number two, we do not want Eglinton, Yonge and Eglinton, other growth nodes, other avenues, to be simply bedroom communities in the sky. We want a balance between office and areas to play, recreation, and where people live. You want a whole community. You do not want just condo after condo after condo after condo after condo after condo after condo. If I said condo about 200 more times, I'd be describing much of Eglinton near Yonge right now. We need more office. We need more office, but at the very least, we need to protect the office that we have. So I plead with you for the city's position, for your community's position, so that we don't undermine our own policy objectives. Support my motion to defend our position. Yes, it may be used against us by the applicant in a future hearing that our staff have already recommended 50%, but at least council's position, the city's position, must stand behind our policy, and that we can defend. We can defend it at the board, we can defend it at the courts, we can defend that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Campbell, 3 minutes clarification of the motion.
Could we have the motion up?
Can we put the motion on the screen, please?
Just for clarification, thank you for the motion about office. It's about office replacement policy. How many offices are there now?
So all that information is within the report.
I know, but I don't read the North York reports.
Well,
so
okay,
I'm
that's
relying on you, right?
With all due respect, Councillor Campbell. With all due respect.
You got to admit to that. Not that it's not important, mind you.
With all due respect, Councillor Campbell, my motion is not addressing how many offices they have in the specific building that will be torn down. Okay?
No, but I'm asking.
Okay, well, then read the report. What my motion specifically focuses on is defending OP 231.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
But if there's no offices there now, that's why I'm just curious to know. I would like to know, I mean, how many offices are we trying to protect?
There are offices there now. What staff, just to be clear, what staff are saying is that they would be fine in this context for roughly 50% office replacement rather than council's position, which is that there should be 100% office replacement. And what I was just saying earlier is that my concern is that, there will be a precedent.
Does the application provide for 50% office replacement? Because from what I'm reading, I don't see offices in there, but does it?
So the applicant, if we approve staff's recommendation, would have to provide 50% office replacement. Again, it's all in the report, Councillor Campbell.
So we do. So now, but the policy is that, and because I've looked into this in my own area, the policy is that where there's a higher order of transit, in other words, where there are subways, it's supposed to be 100%. Is that not the policy? This is why it's unfortunate we can't ask staff at this point.
So it in all cases should be 100%.
No, but is that not the policy?
So in all cases, it should be office replacement. But even if, let's say hypothetically, it were restricted to where higher order transit is, the Eglinton Crosstown is being built underground at that specific site.
Right. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did, at the beginning, ask if anybody had any questions of staff. Everybody said no. Yeah. Councillor Pasternak.
Yeah, just a question for the mover. I mean, I'm on page, what page this is? I'm on the report on the sections you've referred to, and staff seem fully fine with the arrangement. The applicant has lowered the density, and they even argue, staff, and I quote, "Full replacement at the base of the building would be a challenge from a massing neighborhood impact perspective." So in other words, you could be creating a situation in which it's both dangerous and irresponsible to try and go to 100%.
First of all, it would be completely specious to suggest that anything would be dangerous in this context. The real question is this the right development proposal from a good urban planning perspective? I would respectfully submit it's not, based on the fact that this building, both in built form and in proposed usage, does not adhere to the city's own policies. So it actually conflicts with, it contradicts with our own policies, which we are actually right now in the midst of defending at the board. So it undermines our position. If the applicant, I just want to, I want to
running out the clock on me.
Councillor Pasternak, I'm going to finish my sentence.
Running out the clock on me, and it's not
Councillor
right.
Pasternak, I'm going to just
Councillor Matlow, please allow Councillor
I just want to finish my sentence, Councillor Pasternak.
No. Madam Speaker, he's answered the question and he's droning on.
Madam Speaker, I'd just like to finish my sentence by just mentioning an important part of my answer, which is that it's up to an applicant, it's their responsibility to provide an application that actually fits with the site.
I didn't ask this, Madam Speaker.
It's not up to us to decide, well,
Speaker,
too bad you can't fit enough offices in there.
Councillor Matlow, hold on. Councillor Pasternak, ask your question, please. And Councillor Matlow, just answer the question that Councillor Pasternak is asking.
I'm doing my very best.
Aren't most applications that come before us an opportunity to do offsets, to negotiate various aspects, including the lowering of density on this one and the fact that massing at the level that you're suggesting would not work on this site? Don't we work with?
I'm sorry. I'm just having trouble hearing to my right.
Councillor Perks, Councillor DiCiano, please.
Don't we work with applicants to find a compromise? Isn't there wiggle room in our plan to make sure that building can take place, but there's respect for and protection of neighborhoods. Isn't this normal when it comes to a negotiated settlement to build but still represent, respect the nature of the community?
No.
And that was your last question.
To you, Madam Speaker, this situation is far from normal. This situation is incredibly distressing and concerning. It should be for all of us. Because this situation is about the fact that we are being challenged at the board about our own official plan amendment that we stand behind, our policy rather, that we stand behind.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow.
And that if we move forward with anything other than my motion,
Councillor Matlow, you've
will
answered the
undermine our
question.
position.
Thank you. Thank you. To speak, Councillor Pasternak. Oh,
Thank
another
you.
question. We have another question. Councillor DeGiorgio.
Just for
Clarification of the motion only,
clarification
please.
only. My understanding is that this particular application predated Official Plan Amendment 231. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when they made their application, it was under a different set of circumstances.
Well, if we were going to follow that line of logic, then we would essentially say that every time that we go out for consultation for any official plan amendment, that we want to sort of just give a heads up to every developer to just shoot their applications in at the 11th hour as quickly as possible to be able to somehow be grandfathered. That's not actually how it works. We have a policy that we have to stand behind.
Well,
it's our
actually,
position.
There's a very important policy. It's called the clergy principle, and that is when somebody submits an application, they have a right to be, the application has to be evaluated in or with the rules that are in place at the time the application is made. Now, recently, the clergy principle has been modified so that the final decision is based on when the final decision is made, not necessarily what the rules are in place when they make the application.
So you just
and
made,
I think that's what you're driving towards.
you just made my point
Okay,
better than I
I
could.
don't
Thank
think.
you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We're getting into a debate now. Yeah, Councillor Fillion to speak.
Thank you. I agree with, I'll be supporting Councillor Carmichael Greb because I think that this is arguably an overdevelopment of the site. The staff have recommended something different, and they could argue that way, but I think you could very legitimately argue either way. I choose to argue that it's an overdevelopment. And I especially want to say it is really important that we support Councillor Matlow's motion. And for all the reasons he said, I can't really say them any better, but it is, you know, all of us are trying to get more employment in our areas, and we are seeing an erosion of office space because everybody wants to build condos. You know, that's all we get in the North York Centre is condos, because that's what people want to build, because that's what they make money building. They don't want to build office buildings. Here, we had an office building. We have an applicant that we've piled the Lego blocks onto their site and said, here, you know, we'll give you more density than I think they should have gotten. At the very least, we should have required them to replace the office building. And I know there's some technical issues, but if you just state that at the beginning, we're not supporting this if you don't completely provide 100% office replacement, as is our policy, you know, we've got a serious problem. So I'm just going to reiterate what Councillor Matlow said. He's already said it, but this will bite all of us. If council doesn't stand up for its own principles, then what chance do we have of upholding that principle at the OMB? So if you believe that we need a proper mix of office and condo in the city and not just allow everybody to maximize the value of their property by building condos, even where they had an existing office building, you know, if you believe that we need to do that, then support Councillor Matlow's motion.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I want to thank Councillor Matlow for refocusing our attention on the issue of commercial and office replacement on this site. We were faced in North York Community Council with the pain that we've all felt that there was a community contingent there who are upset, residents who live on Henning. But it's important to really take a long, hard look at our policy and at this site. This is one of those moments when I wish that we had the technology in the budget that a planning report comes with a real satellite photo. Instead, we have a little line drawing. And while it looks like it's eating up a residential street, what you don't see, little space beside it, has long been a commercial. In fact, one could even call it an industrial site. It's a hydro exchange building that's been there so long, it's actually a heritage listed property. So it's in the vicinity of commercial. There are offices there now. But right across from it, what's also not visible because of the line drawing as opposed to a satellite photo, is that this sits right across the street from what will be one of the most important transportation hubs in this city and indeed Canada. This is Yonge and Eglinton, and the site we're talking about is simply diagonal to the bus bays. The bus bays that have long been empty, the Yonge Eglinton Centre. A subway will meet up with the Eglinton Crosstown, which will be the longest LRT, both above and below ground line in the country. It's currently the largest infrastructure project in Canada, and it's running right through our town. And this is the centre of it. Now, my residents were pretty shocked to find that they were going to have to absorb 43 stories in exchange for having the Don Mills Station, also which will one day be a co-terminus multi-line stop. And so that's what happens when you're pretty much right on top of the station. This is about 300 meters away from the actual terminal. And so we've already made a very clear statement to the province that in an exchange for that investment in transit, that we're willing to invest and intensify around those transit hubs. And the ways in which we want to intensify are not purely residential, but we need a mixture of commercial and residential, because a transit line doesn't work if everyone is scurrying in one direction because the work's over here and scurrying in another because the residents are all over here. You really need a range of activities around each station hub, especially when you have multi-lines running through it. And even before this subway line was extended, Yonge and Eglinton, when I was a little girl, was a place gradually intensifying. 2300 Yonge was the first offices of the first offices of McDonald's Restaurants Canada when they first arrived here. Commercial and industrial and office are all a part of this community, and that you want to maintain along with the residential intensification. Else why else would we be going out and asking other governments to invest in transit?
Here, here.
This is our official plan, providing both
Here, here.
employment and residence.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Absolutely. Well done.
Okay, members of council, what I'd like to suggest that we move a motion that we finish this item. Okay, who wants to move it? Councillor Carroll. Okay, recorded vote. Recorded vote, just to finish this item. Pardon? And then the confirming bill. Well, I don't know, there are other members that put their name up to speak. If some members of council want to take their name off.
Councillor Fletcher, please.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Okay, this is to extend just to finish the item in the confirming bill.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 26 to 16. The required two-thirds majority was not achieved.
All right. Okay. Well, there are some members that had their name on the list that voted no, which I find surprising. They had their name on the list to speak, and they vote no to extend. All right. Like, can't figure that one out. But if your name is on the list to speak, why would you vote no to extend? Okay, so okay, Councillor Pasternak to speak.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'd be happy to speak. I'm speaking in favor of the application. I have heard hundreds of times over the 7 years that I've been here, we have to listen to staff, we have to follow staff, it's in the staff report, staff are arguing this, and all of a sudden, now, when it's convenient, we're contradicting staff. This,
What about the park?
I'll move the staff recommendations. Okay. This is such a divisive issue in this local community. A whopping 35 people came out to the first consultation to fight this application. Now it's true, 80 people did come out the second time. OPA 231 is currently under appeal. Unfortunately, we didn't go to questions to staff to get clarity on that. This applicant lowered its density in order to reduce its obligation for its office space. The implications of having this application defeated is millions of dollars in development fees and tens of millions of dollars and future taxes. And I'd like to hear the voices of those who have been fighting for more daycare subsidies, for those who have been fighting for more housing allowances, for those who have been fighting for harm reduction and climate control, because this will cost the city tens of millions of dollars over a long period of time. This application also gives $1 million to the Eglinton Park, and it also allows for the purchase of 61 Montgomery for a park nearby. I mean, I don't usually read applications that are not in my area, but you know what? I've got to tell you, we're building a $6 billion transit line right there, and you've also got the north-south Young Line. If we fight density on our major high-end transit projects, then how on earth are we going to pay for the civic improvements which come with these builds? How are we going to fund future transit? If we set a precedent that we will defeat high-density development along major transit roads, how will we ever fix the transit mess in the city? How will we be able to fund environmental assessments in future projects? Look, anyone who moves into the Yonge and Eglinton area will know that it's a high-density area, that transit attracts builders and building, and that we have what's before us is a positive staff report supporting this. Sure, it's not perfect, but I can also tell you that when it comes to development applications, there's a lot of haggling along the way. There's a lot of give and take, and our various bylaws and plans and provincial statute is written that way so that there can be a little give and take. And in this case, they have lowered the building. In this case, they have given more in Section 37. They have given a local park. And you know, when you look at this street also, it's a very small street. It's a dead-end street. The residents of this building will not be driving up the dead-end street. They'll be coming right back onto Eglinton. And we did hear from many of these residents at North York Community Council, and they're worried about traffic, and they're worried about shadowing. But you know what? The shadow studies argue that they won't be majorly impacted by, if at all, by this building. At the same time, people will be coming out of this building almost immediately onto Eglinton Avenue and will not be driving up this residential street. If you look through this, it is a reasonable development supported by staff. And as I said, to summarize, there are many voices in this chamber over many years that say this, staff supported this, we've got to go with staff, they're the experts. I urge you to do the same.
Thank you. Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I call the question.
Okay, the question's been called. Recorded vote. I think everybody's ready to vote. Everybody, yeah.
The motion to call the question carries 29 to 12.
Okay, so motion number 1 by Councillor Greb. Motion number 2 by Councillor Matlow. Recorded.
Councillor Palacio and Councillor Campbell, please.
The motion carries 25 to 16.
Motion by Councillor Carmichael Greb. As amended, recorded vote.
Councillor Mihevc and Councillor Crisanti, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 9 to 32.
On the item, recorded vote. Yeah, recorded vote. Yes, on the item. That's right. Recorded vote, okay.
Councillor Mihevc, Councillor Cole, Councillor Fletcher, please.
The item carries 35 to 6.
Councillor Ford, you have a motion to introduce the confirming bill.
Yes, Madam Speaker, that leave be granted to introduce a bill to confirm to the point of the introduction of this motion the proceedings of City Council meeting 31 on July 4th, 2017.
Shall leave be granted to introduce this bill, recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Carmichael Greb. Councillor Thompson, please.
Councillor DiCiano, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Palacio, please. Councillor Fletcher, please. Thank you.
The motion to introduce the confirming bill carries unanimously 41 in favor.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw, recorded vote?
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Davis. Councillor Matlow, please.
Councillor Fillion, Councillor Fragadakis, Councillor Crisanti, Councillor Holland, please.
Councillor Kelly, please.
Counselor Cole, please.
The motion to enact the confirming bill carries unanimously, 41 in favor.
Okay, we'll recess to tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you, members of council. Thank you to staff.